What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Chris Welsh, and today we are talking Week 14 wide receiver ranks. Joining me is Billy Muzio and Pat Fitzmaurice, where we're going to be breaking down the top 36, going into potential flexes, some of the biggest decisions you guys have got to make this week. Hopefully, we are going to answer them, and we will also be looking at the ECR, the Fantasy Pros expert consensus ranks as we are going along comparing, so we can also kind of give you a vibe of what the wide receiver ranks are going to look like this week. Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice, are you ready to talk about some wide receivers, who you love, who you hate? Should I start Jaden Reed this week? And should I feel comfortable? I got a really important league, Pat.
Yeah, it's been up and down, but I think the overall profile is good. The Lions have really struggled with slot receivers, and we saw that last week.
In the same league, Mr. Billy Muzio, Juwan Jennings. I think it's Juwan Jennings' breakout week. I don't think we're going to quite get too much into him in this one, but I do believe this is going to be a Juwan Jennings week. Are you going to co-sign with me?
Juwan Moss Jennings, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Juwan Jennings, and I have a little biasness over here as a Niner fan, but he has been the wide receiver stepped up, so I have a little faith in him this week.
I like it. Browns also give up some big plays. I did this on the prediction show, but 2 of the last 4 weeks, they've given up 125 plus to 2 different receivers, and they were kind of the bigger separator. So if Deebo does get some extra looks, they do cover the X receiver, as Erickson had talked about a little bit more, which could knock down Jennings. But Addison and Christian Watson went over like 150 on just short amounts of reception. So the Bears give up some big plays. That's what Juwan Jennings does. Oh, but we're just throwing out some extras for you right now. I'm looking at my teams. Let's look at your guys' teams. We're going to pull up the big board and go through it. So let's kick this off and look at your wide receiver ones on Fantasy Pros, starting with Jamar Chase at number 1 against Dallas this week. I love it. A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Puka Nacua. That rounds out your top 5. Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, and Tyreek Hill. That is your top 12. Fitzy, we're not going to talk about Tyreek Hill this week. We've been talking a lot about Tyreek. I always press on the Tyreek Hill. I'm so over him. I'm not going to press you on it. We are going to press on this wide difference that you two have on one of these top 12 receivers. So much so that Mr. Billy Muzio does not have Calvin Ridley inside the top 12, inside the top 15, inside the top 20. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 24 versus Fitzy's wide receiver 12. So Billy, you kick it off for us. Why do you hate Calvin Ridley?
It's more about this offense that I don't really like. And it's the quarterback play. We're seeing some better play, but still there's a lot of inconsistencies. Calvin Ridley has only seen double-digit half-point PPR points 4 times in the first 13 weeks of the season. This is not a guy that's instilling confidence in me inside my lineup on a week-to-week basis. Yes, he's out on the field running routes. Last week, 100%, got his cardio in. He's seeing, 24% of the target shares roughly for the last 4 weeks. It's just not good targets. And this is not a game that looks like it's going to be a high over-under. We're talking about 39.5 on the total here for the game from Vegas. This is an implied low line here for Tennessee Titans, and it's not a game that I want to be leaning on in, say, the wide receiver position here for Ridley. So there's a lot of data support the argument here for him being outside even further than what I have him at. From a pure route standpoint, he's going to have opportunities, so that's why I have him where I do. But I'm still not confident inside the top 24.
He's still a first-read guy for the team. They tried to get him the ball, some poorly thrown passes. I think there was a drop or 2. He just didn't do anything. Jaguar is kind of a completely different team that you're going against, as in you can do pretty much whatever you want. It's a 4-star rating according to the matchup grid that's on the rankings on ECR and Fantasy Pros. The number 1 of the week is Justin Jefferson with a 5-star. The 2 4-stars, there's 3 4-stars that are inside the top 12. You have Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Calvin Ridley. I said I wasn't going to do this, but Pat, Calvin Ridley or Tyreek Hill this week?
Tyreek Hill for me still.
All right, so
I take that back. I've got Ridley ranked higher.
All right, so let's hear about Ridley.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I do admire Billy for manufacturing a statistical argument against Calvin Ridley when really it's a principled stand Billy is making against a player who bet on sports, given Billy's anti-gambling stance as a man who has put thousands of hours into playerprofiler.com's fast draft DFS app. And great app, by the way. Everyone should check it out. And yes, absolutely. No, I don't want to get too carried away with Ridley's ranking, but he has averaged 8.6 targets, 4.9 catches, 76.9 receiving yards a game since week 6. So he's been pretty prominently involved for the Titans, doing everything but scoring touchdowns, because those all go to Westbrook-Ikhine. And the matchup against the Jaguars, obviously pretty juicy. The Jags have been really giving it up to lead receivers the last couple of weeks. Nico Collins had 8 catches for 119 yards against them last week. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 11 catches for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville in week 11. It just seems like a pretty favorable spot for Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley, play or to not play. That's where it kind of lines here, and 2 lines in the sand drawn between these fine gentlemen. We're going to get out of the top 12 wide receivers. They're pretty chalky, and get into the wide receivers too. But first, let me tell you guys about Game Time. You guys are trying to get set for some big game tickets, whether it's in sports or any event. We've got our FantasyPros big company meetup that's happening in 2 months in February, and we are going to Las Vegas. So we are in the planning process of seeing what type of events we're going to do, and we are going to start with checking out Game Time and seeing how we can get the whole company together and get the best pricing on any event that we decide to check out. Game Time has got their all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature, showing the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, which is my 100% favorite thing. I legit cannot stand going, seeing a ticket price, and then coming back and seeing $70 in fees for one ticket. They're going to tell you exactly what it is up front, so there are no horrible, awful surprises. You can check out the seat views with a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it. They've got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, Game Time's ticket coverage. Your purchase is coverage with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? It's game time. Wide receiver 2s. These are the wide receiver 13s through 24. We're going to start with Drake London, followed by Malik Neighbors, Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DJ Moore, Jakobi Meyers, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. That's your top 20. Then we've got DK Metcalf, Jaden Reed, Devontae Adams, and Brian Thomas. Well, hello, Jakobi Meyers. How about this too? Jakobi Meyers jumped from 22 to 18 in the last 12 hours when we were doing this. So as more rankers were getting their ranks in, Jakobi Meyers is really getting in people's feels here. He's got Tampa, which is a pretty good matchup, moving up the board. He is ranked higher than Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, DK Metcalf, even my Jaden Reed that I needed to start Fitz. Let's talk about it, though. Fitzy, you've got him at 16, and actually, Billy, you've also got him at 16. So you guys are higher than consensus. So, Pat, you kick us off with Jakobi Meyers.
Yeah, I've been a habitual fader of Jakobi Meyers. No more. I am done fading this guy. Meyers is on pace for a 100-catch season. And he's had 28 catches over his last 4 games. He's had double-digit targets in 3 of his last 4 games. I don't know if there's a wide receiver in the league with a better week-to-week target outlook than Jakobi Meyers has. The Raiders basically have 2 pass catchers. It's Brock Bowers and Jakobi Meyers. That's pretty much it. And Aiden O'Connell, dare I say, looked pretty good last week. So, maybe if he had been sort of a disaster, or if it had been Desmond Ridder, I wouldn't have felt like Jakobi Meyers deserved a spot in the top 20. But with AOC looking pretty good last week, yeah, I'm all on board here. The floor with the amount of target volume Meyers has been getting is very safe, and I think there's a pretty nice ceiling too, and a good matchup against the Bucs.
Billy, I obviously want to get your breakdown of Meyers, but let me ask you also this. Because sometimes I think we get a little isolated in rank. We're like, this is the value. But push comes to shove, and you have got DK Metcalf and Jakobi Meyers, and you have to pick one. Or I feel like the Garrett Wilson one's becoming a little bit more obvious. But DK Metcalf, let's just do him. Are you legit going to start Jakobi Meyers over Metcalf? I am presuming you don't have Metcalf in your top 15, by the way.
I have Metcalf at 19. I have Jakobi at 16. So it is close.
So you're going to make that move, though. You're going to sit DK Metcalf on your bench for Jakobi Meyers. You're going to hold true to it.
I would, yes.
Okay.
And it breaks down to volume. And we're seeing, JSN take over a lot of the volume here in Seattle, and we're seeing Jakobi Meyers just dominate the volume. I mean, Pat mentioned it. We've seen 31% or more of the target share for 3 of the last 4 weeks. He saw 37% in week 9. I mean, this is a guy who's just dominating the targets. He's on the field for, 95% of the routes during this stretch from week 9 to week 13. So this is not a guy that should be faded right now. I mean, even if you don't like him as a player, I mean, the volume's there. And this is something that you cannot ignore. I mean, it's a good matchup. Vegas odds we have here for the totals, 46.5 is one of the highest over-unders of the week. We have Vegas as the 6.5 point dogs. That means we're going to see a lot of fourth quarter throws here for Las Vegas. And Jakobi Meyers is going to eat into 30+% of that. So the volume is there. The game script is setting up nicely for him to be heavily involved and get a lot of garbage time down the stretch as well. So Jakobi Meyers is a big play this week.
Something I didn't think I would say, but Jakobi Meyers is ranked higher than both Jets wide receivers, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. That's the level of comfort that people have right now with Jakobi Meyers. One that I really want to hit, and we actually made a change off of our sheet, was Brian Thomas, who comes in at ECR 24. He's got Tennessee this week, not a great rating, 2-star rating, and he's going to be doing it with Mac Jones. And I think that's a little bit of a concern. But what Mac was able to do was get him involved in the game. He missed him on a giant touchdown, but he ended up scoring a touchdown. He put up viable fantasy stats with Trevor Lawrence. We all kind of liked Brian Thomas. Under Mac Jones, we all feel a little bit queasy, yet he has still come in at wide receiver 24. Billy, let's start with you. Your thoughts and where you have Brian Thomas under Mac Jones against this Tennessee defense.
Yeah, I have him at wide receiver 27. I'm kind of on the fence with Mac Jones because he did favor him in the red zone. He saw 67% of the end zone targets last week. And the targets numbers didn't really dip off. He still saw 24%, where previous weeks he saw 25%, and then it was much lower from then on back in weeks 10 and 9. But we do see his involvement seems to be ticking up in terms of the target share department. His routes have been pretty consistent along the years, kind of that mid 90%. But it's the end zone targets that are going to really, for me at least, give him that upside that we want to see him have here. And so that's why I'm kind of comfortably inside the top 30 with him.
Fitzy, what do you think about Brian Thomas? I feel like he's in a really weird spot. I think a lot of people, championship-based teams might have him floating out there. Are you comfortable getting him in a lineup?
Pretty comfortable. He is sort of close to
comfortable.
He's close to the dividing line between comfort and discomfort. I think it's probably right around him because, I don't know, I mean, I've got him just ahead of Jalen Waddle, Juwan Jennings, DeAndre Hopkins, Khalil Shakir. It's probably after Shakir where my confidence level starts to go south. And Brian Thomas has been terrific this season. He's really good. But do I trust anything on this Jaguars team, this 2-10 Jaguars team with Mac Jones at quarterback? Not entirely.
So what is his actual rank for you?
Wide receiver 28. I'm pretty much right in line with Billy.
So you have Juwan Jennings outside of that?
I do.
Okay, might have to hit some Juwan Jennings here then.
Yeah,
in a second.
I mean, I don't know about Brock Purdy's crunked up shoulder, and Bears pass defense not a complete pushover. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll hit that here in just a second. Before we do, and we get to those wide receiver threes, guys, low testosterone affects about 30% of adult men in America. Are you feeling the drag of fatigue, noticing a dip in muscle mass, or sensing a slump in libido? If so, it's time to get your testosterone levels tested. If you have low T, Kyzatrex is an FDA-approved pill that's changing the game in testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, Kyzatrex restored testosterone levels in nearly 9 out of 10 clinical study participants, and its unique formulation bypasses the liver to avoid liver damage. It's time to break free from injections, pellets, and gels. Choose Kyzatrex and take a step toward being the hero of your life again. To see if you qualify, visit Kyzatrex.com and take the low T quiz today. That's KYZATREX.com. By prescription only, Kyzatrex is a controlled substance and can be a target of abuse. Kyzatrex is not for use in pregnant women or men with prostate or breast cancer. Safety and efficacy in those younger than 18 is not known. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased blood pressure, worsening prostate symptoms, increased risk of prostate cancer, blood clots in legs or lungs, decreased sperm count, liver problems, enlarged or painful breasts, and breathing problems while you sleep. Common side effects include swelling of ankles, feet, or body, increased red blood cell count, and increase in prostate-specific antigen or PSA levels. PSA is a test used to detect prostate cancer. Report these symptoms to your doctor. Call your doctor to learn more about Kyzatrex. For questions or more information, visit Kyzatrex.com or call 1-833-949-5040. Wide receiver threes, 25 through 36. We've got, it's Juwan Jennings at 25, Jameson Williams, Khalil Shakir, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, Darnell Mooney, then Deebo Samuel in at 31, DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, Jordan Addison, Amari Cooper, and Devontae Smith. We will turn what was just going to be a Deebo Samuel conversation into a Deebo versus Juwan Jennings conversation. ECR is 31. Both of you are higher on Deebo this week. I'm shocked. Deebo has done absolutely nothing across the board to prove anything to anybody, except he will be more involved in the running game, which I fully believe. You guys have him. Let me look at this. You guys both have him as a wide receiver 2 this week. Billy, what the hell's going on?
You touched base on it earlier. He's going to be involved in the running game here. And anytime we've seen the starting running back go down, Deebo does get involved. And to your point earlier, has not been great as a wide receiver. I mean, I have Juwan Jennings higher than him as a receiver this week. But Deebo last week, 78% of the routes, Juwan Jennings, 96% of the routes. We've seen Deebo, still get his targets, but they've been inconsistent. He's had 18, 27, 15, 29. So judging off that logic, he's going to be below 20% and back in the backfield here. So I can see them, utilizing him a lot on the ground, getting him maybe comfortable. We've seen Brock Purdy's shoulder be a bit of an issue right now. I don't necessarily think they're going to take a lot of deep shots. I still think they take a couple, but this means that they're probably going to utilize some screen passes for Deebo, something easy, quick slant racks or quick slants. And then I think Deebo Samuel is going to be the benefit factor of that. So I think Deebo's going to be involved this week more than he has in the past. I think that he's going to be comfortably inside the top 24.
Did you say you have Jennings over Deebo though?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
yep.
Pat, I'll bring it back. What the hell's going on? Deebo at 23 or 24 and Juwan Jennings outside of that? Sell me.
Well, Deebo's not a comfortable start for sure. A guy who is wide receiver 47 and half point PPR fantasy scoring or fantasy points per game, at least. And he has produced fewer than 5 fantasy points in 3 straight games. Although maybe we give him a mulligan for that snow game in Buffalo. I don't know. I'll leave that to you. You guys are the 49ers fans. But we're banking on increased rushing production. That's mainly it here. And as rough a season as it's been for him, I still think Deebo Samuel is one of the most dangerous players in the league with the ball in his hands. I can't unsee what I've seen from Deebo Samuel over the last however many years. The guy's terrific in the open field. For the love of God, Kyle Shanahan, get the ball to Deebo in the open field, please. So
I just have to say, all this talk about the Niners and Pat's enthusiasm here is spiking the libido talk off of the read here we just had.
Well, hit him up. Make sure doctor approved.
Yeah, and I just don't know. Are the 49ers going to have a downfield passing game with Brock Purdy? Clearly not 100% and his shoulder. Yeah. So it's not that I think he's going to be threatened by Ricky Pearsall or anything like that. And I could be underselling it. I mean, there is potential for a smash game for sure for Juwan Jennings. We've seen it before in games where the 49ers have lost other offensive weaponry. And, now they're down to a pretty limited selection of offensive skill players to get the ball to. So I think there's big upside for both of these guys potentially. I feel a little bit better with Deebo than I do with Jennings.
I'm on the opposite side, but all jokes aside about Deebo, I can 100% see him scoring a touchdown. I can see them inside the 5. I could see Garendo starting off drives and Deebo getting one inside the red zone. I could see him becoming a primary running back in the red zone. But my only problem, my counter to this Deebo talk is he's literally done nothing. So it's a hope and a dream. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, I'm worried Deebo is going to be a lot of nothing. And those are the players that I feel a little bit uncomfortable about. But, he could outdo it. It's just I think there will be volume there with Jawan Jennings. But I ranked Deebo outside the top 40, I think, last week, and that ended up working out. I was just very surprised to see that you guys both have him on there, but maybe he is back to being a play because, again, the one thing we've reiterated is he's going to be a part of the running game. There's just no doubt about it. They got to get him going in some capacity, and maybe this will be the week. Talking about get going, how about Jerry freaking Jeudy? Jerry Jeudy comes in at ECR 28 this week. You guys have both got him higher. Billy, you are quite a bit higher. They're going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which there's a theoretical tough matchup. If you go back and look at that game when Surtain was on Jeudy, locked him down. I believe Surtain held him to 2 for 20. But then when he was able to get near Wallace and they had the zone coverage, Jeudy just destroyed them. I say all of this to say that the Steelers very likely could lock Porter up on Jerry Jeudy with what he's been doing, and that could put some big questions in here. I say all of this, though, Billy, you've got him at wide receiver 20. I think it's hard to kind of bet against him. They get volume targets to all these receivers, and I think the Browns are going to be a big question for a lot of people this week. And I think the answer is probably going to just be start them in general. You just seem extra optimistic about Jeudy after that game. Rightfully so.
It's not just that game. I mean, when we look at the attempts that Cleveland has thrown here, I mean, let's just go back to week 9. 46 attempts in week 9 for Jameis Winston. Week 11, because they had the bye there. 46 attempts again in week 11 against New Orleans. Dips down to 27 versus Pittsburgh, but then 58 attempts last week. Anytime you have this type of volume being thrown, you have to bump up the receivers. I mean, even if they're bad targets, the amount of targets that are being thrown at them, even if they're catching 60% of these things, I mean, this is an opportunity for some massive yards. And so, yeah, matchup isn't great, but if we can see another, even if we're seeing 35 to 40 attempts, this is going to be still in favor of Jerry Jeudy here. And I think we're probably closer to the 40 range again. And I can't ignore that type of attempts and what it does to the receivers.
Pat, is the 20, I was thinking of it, 27, is your rank just indicative of him not being a wide receiver 2, simply just about matchup here and maybe Porter being locked up?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to worry about some shadow coverage potentially, although they do move Jerry Jeudy around the formation a little bit, which might help him escape the shadow in some circumstances. But man, I do worry that I'm too low on him because over Jameis Winston's 5 starts, Jeudy has finished wide receiver 39, wide receiver 28, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 21, and wide receiver 1 in weekly half-point PPR fantasy scoring. He's averaging 9.8 targets, 6.6 catches, 122.8 receiving yards a game over that stretch. Now, obviously, the yardage figure is skewed by that 235-yard performance against the Broncos, but Jeudy has had no fewer than 73 receiving yards in any of the 5 Jameis Winston starts. So not an easy matchup, but I do feel like wide receiver 27 is pretty justified and maybe even a little too conservative.
Okay, I want to hit NWI for life, as we're always going to say when we talk about NWI. Nick Westbrook does not come up on this list. He's 37, by the way. ECR 37 as we're doing this. You guys have a little different. I think, Billy, you have him at 36. Fitz, you've got him at 38. Obviously want you guys to break him down, but what I'm curious about, and I know your ranks are your ranks, but with Nick Westbrook, where do you think the line exists that he's in the same group of? So my example here, DeAndre Hopkins is at 32. Jalen Waddle is at 33. Jordan Addison is at 34. Fitz, let's start with you. If you were to say, I know you have him at 38, he's at 38, but the line of the group he's in where maybe you're just, you're bouncing these names around. If you really wanted to start, he could over. What is the line? Is it Waddle? Is it Hopkins? Is it none of them for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine?
For me, it's lower than those guys. I would say he's kind of in a tier with guys like Cedric Tillman coming off the concussion. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's obviously a great comp as a guy who's like a shot play specialist. Christian Watson, another
so
guy.
He's the top of a tier. Like, he doesn't belong. I feel like you could make a case for him maybe against Jordan Addison, but you're saying is like his tier starts with him and it's guys down. He can't break up any.
I think so. Like I've got Addison ranked 3 spots ahead of him, but like Addison is just he's such a much better player than Westbrook-Ikhine. I actually got into an argument with a YouTube commenter this week on Tyreek Hill versus Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And like, he like is kind of just, his argument was scoreboard, like who's been a colossal disappointment this season. But to me, it's just like the production for Westbrook-Ikhine is just so fluky. 40% of his receptions have been touchdowns. 21% of his targets have been touchdowns. Like I don't want to bet on such remarkably good touchdown fortune. Like I'm not continuing to make the bet. Like that's never going to hold up, although it has now for almost 2 months. But it's like, that said, he does have a pretty favorable matchup against the Jaguars this week, but like he's not even getting that many targets. Like he's had the maximum targets.
He had 6 this past week. Finally.
Okay, but like I think he's had 1 game during this 8-game stretch where he's had 8 touchdowns. 1 game where he's had more than 3 catches.
Agreed. Yeah, I know.
So the volume does not support anything higher than this high end wide receiver 4 ranking.
I love those type. I love, when I say I love, as in I really despise those type of comments. So I say it sarcastically. I love those type of comments where people do that because it's like, there's no end. Like, what do you want to say? The guy has no targets. He's completely it's all touchdown equity. Like, yeah, sure, he has scored more. But if the point is like we should say to start Nick Westbrook over Tyreek Hill every week, no. We're not. So congratulations to you for maybe you starting Nick Westbrook over everybody and him being good. I don't really know what the point of those is, but those are mindless drones. People need to be heard, and we can understand needing to be heard. Let's hear from you, Mr. Billy Muzio. What do you think about this Nick Westbrook? I'm very curious at the same question of like, where does that line go where he belongs in this category? Is there anybody in that 36 that I listed, like the Waddles, the Hopkins, the Addisons, that he could be involved with, or no?
Real quick, I would like to throw some fire on the fuel for this YouTube debate here between Pat and the YouTube listener. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is the wide receiver 7 and half-point PPR from week 7 to week 13. And it is unsustainable with a 40% touchdown rate. He's the wide receiver 4 in that category on the season. And we all know that touchdowns are the most, I should say, the toughest statistic to predict in the NFL. So I don't feel confident predicting that on a week-to-week basis. So I would say, though, the argument could be made to have him near maybe the wide receiver 30, 31 range, kind of that high end wide receiver 3, maybe, I think is maybe the argument, just based upon the usage in the red zone, because the touchdown rate is extremely high and it's fluky, but the consistency of the targets in the red zone are not fluky. So he's seen now 55% of the red zone targets in the wide receiver category for the Titans on the season. So that's something that we can't ignore. When they do get in the red zone, he is the favorite of the targets category in this area. And I mean, last week, 67% of the red zone targets went to him in that game. So I have to say, you can't bank on touchdowns, but he's probably one of the best bets right now of the season to have it happen.
The matchup is sick too. So
what would be funny, Welsh, is if like the rest of the way Westbrook-Ikhine starts getting like 10 target games, 6 catch games, 70, 80 yard games, and the touchdowns dry up. And the touchdowns dry up.
And Tyreek gets 3 catches for 2 touchdowns every single game.
Yeah, but if that happens, if Westbrook-Ikhine starts getting these 10 targets, 6 catch, 70, 80 yard games, I'm going to have him ranked in the 20s every week, even if the touchdowns aren't there. Like that's
volume is so important. And that's the thing. Absolutely. Like, I don't really know what people are you trying to gain from that. Like, Nick Westbrook's been awesome. I've started him in multiple spots. I've suggested starting him in multiple spots. It's not just this week that we learned that he's like a red zone target. We know all these things, but there is a battle of consistency. Yes, he has not put up a nothing burger recently, but if you get 3 targets and don't score a touchdown, unless you're MVS, you're probably going to put up 1 point. So like that theory doesn't work, but we all are going to kind of work off of volume as well. And he hasn't been a volume player, but it does look like it's trending, and it's a great matchup this week where they might have those opportunities. So that's why I bring it up. I mean, I'm kind of in defense of Nick Westbrook because like, I think he might be closer. Like Amari Cooper's at 35. We really care about like Amari Cooper has done anything. Like Jordan Addison has had some big games. Okay. I think he actually could belong in that territory, but he exhibits the most difficult thing to predict. Like you guys have mentioned, it's the touchdowns, and it's the Titans, not a touchdown magnet. So it's a fun question. And guess what? Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is going to be a part of a lot of questions again this week, going into your final week of the regular season. And we will have you covered. So don't forget to check out our weekly Start and Sit live stream on our YouTube channel, where you can come and ask specific NWI questions. We'll be here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And for those on the podcast, youtube.com/FantasyPros. Hit the subscribe, get notified. You'll know when we're live. And you can ask all the Nick Westbrook-Ikhine questions to your heart desire. You can ask Deebo, Nick Westbrook, whatever you want. I might take Nick Westbrook over Deebo this week. I might just do it out of principle. So we'll see how it goes. Billy Muzio, Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Chris Welsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We love you, and good luck in your week 14. And we'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.